Welcome to today's broadcast of the Goebbels Diaries. Today we're here to commemorate the life of Joseph Goebbels. This program will start with a summary of Goebbels' rise to power inside the Nazi Party. Then we will conduct an interview with Ian Kershaw to discuss the roles and impacts of Joseph Goebbels inside the Nazi regime, as well as his successes and ideology. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Joseph Goebbels was born on October 29, 1897, into a Catholic family in Reich, Germany. He could not fight in the First World War because of a clubbed foot which hindered his ability to walk. He aspired to be an author and obtained a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Heidelberg in 1921. After a failed attempt to establish a career as a writer and a playwright, he joined the NSDAP.
Yes, Goebbels joined the NSDAP in the early 1920s and was attracted to Hitler's skills as an orator. In 1926, Hitler appointed him as party district leader in Berlin. In 1929, he was named director of Nazi propaganda. When the Nazis took control of the Reichstag, Hitler appointed him as Minister of Enlightenment and Propaganda in 1933. In September 1933, Goebbels became director of the newly formed Reich Chamber of Culture. Goebbels was responsible for presenting Hitler to the public in a favorable light. He did so by regulating the content of all German media and also fomented values of the Nazi regime, such as racial purity and anti-Semitism.
Goebbels knew the importance of propaganda in influencing public opinion. He exercised control of German newspapers, books, music, and radio systems, with the goal of creating a single public opinion. Goebbels was successful in distributing the Nazi ideology through propaganda. He had an uncanny ability to express his thoughts in writing and was also a talented orator. In April 1934, the Nazis established a unified radio system. Goebbels called it a spiritual weapon of the totalitarian state. By 1939, 70% of households owned a radio, and in 1935, the estimated audience of Hitler's speeches was over 56 million. Films such as The Eternal Jew hammered home the anti-Semitic message of the party. He collaborated with the filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl to produce films that would spread the nationalistic and anti-Semitic message of the Nazi regime. The film Triumph of the Will produced the record Nuremberg Rally and portrayed the might of Hitler and Germany.
Goebbels also knew of the importance of music and propaganda. It was Goebbels himself who said, "Music affects the heart and emotions more than the intellect." Erika, or On the Heath, A Little Flower Blooms, is a marching song sang by the German military in World War II. Erika was a common female name in Germany. The song has themes of a soldier longing to return to his beloved and recalls her when seeing the plant which has the same name.
So Goebbels used various forms of propaganda to influence public opinion about the Nazi regime. But did the propaganda reflect his personal views? Could you expand on Goebbels' ideology?
Goebbels was an anti-Semitic and a nationalist. He orchestrated a boycott on Jewish businesses and led the burning of non-German books after assuming power in April 1933. Shortly after, he passed Reich press law, which ordered the removal of all Jewish and non-Nazi editors from German newspapers and magazines. In September 1933, Goebbels became director of the newly formed Reich Chamber of Culture. The works of Jewish artists, actors, musicians, and writers were banned and replaced by works more representational of the Nazi regime. Goebbels issued the orders for Kristallnacht in November 9, 1938. Jewish businesses and synagogues were looted, burned, and destroyed. Nearly 30,000 Jewish men were arrested by the members of the SS and sent to concentration camps. Kristallnacht was one of the most important turning points of the Nazi anti-Semitic policy. Following the events of Kristallnacht, the anti-Semitic policy of the Nazi regime became concentrated into the hands of the SS. Measures aimed at removing Jews from the German economy and social life were expanded and radicalized.
Near 1943, when the end of the war was near, Goebbels was a prominent advocate of total war. Total war is the mobilization of military, natural resources, and the economy to the fullest extent for the war effort. Victory or total defeat, in the last remaining days of the Third Reich, Goebbels moved to his further bunker under the Reich Chancellery. He was one of the few senior Nazi officials at Hitler's side and remained devoted to Hitler in the end of the war. With the German army now fleeing and the Allies calling for unconditional surrender, Goebbels proposed the idea of total war. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler committed suicide and Goebbels replaced him as Germany's chancellor. On May 1st, 1945, Goebbels gave his 6 children cyanide pills and he and his wife, Magda, both committed suicide. He knew how the outside world would view the criminal acts committed by the regime. As terrifying as it was, Goebbels shows incredible awareness of his actions, which is solidified by his infamous quote, "We shall either go down in history as the greatest statesmen of all time, or as the greatest criminals." Before we end this broadcast of the Goebbels Diaries, I would like to analyze some of the Nazi propaganda during World War II. The Nazi Party held rallies organized by Albert Speer. Flags, symbols, uniforms, and music were used in these rallies to create a sense of belonging. In addition, the regime released propaganda in the form of pictures and posters regulated and approved by Joseph Goebbels to the public. It seems to me that Goebbels and the Nazi regime placed an emphasis on children in their propaganda. Perhaps this is because they wanted to control the ideology of children so that their future supporters would be secure.
Yes, this is correct. Young members of the Nazi youth were brainwashed by Nazi ideology and were trained to become completely loyal to Hitler and the Nazi regime. Young men in Nazi Germany were expected to be members of Hitler Youth, and young women were expected to be members of the Bund Deutscher Modell. Posters such as this one depict 2 happy children dressed in party uniforms and standing in front of the Nazi flag. Additionally, pictures of Hitler hugging German children were displayed to portray Hitler as an affectionate and caring leader. The role of women and family values were also stressed by Goebbels and the Nazi propaganda machine. Posters such as the one shown here depicts the ideal Aryan family. This was used to spread the idea of racial purity and superiority. Women were expected to make many babies and raise them to be loyal followers of Hitler and the Nazis.
Well, I would like to thank Ian Kershaw for his time, and this concludes this edition of the Goebbels Diaries. Thank you for joining us today, and always, we will see you next time.